Alright, this week we'll take a look at the unboxing of the Oneida Air Systems Original Dust Deputy. Now you can see from the box, it's the complete system here. Let me flip around to the front. This is the Dust Deputy Deluxe, and the Deluxe version basically comes with the air hose, or a shorter air hose for dust in. You have the Cyclone piece, which is basically the second stage of your dust collector, a couple of buckets below, and the hardware to mount everything together. Now, they do make this product with the DIY kit. It's the Cyclone only piece. You'd have to supply your own bolts, hardware, and rubber flange to keep that seal, and of course your own hose. The product works well with fine dust from sanding, drywall, any of that fine dust that you don't want to get into your lungs, probably less than 5 micron. This Cyclone piece can help extract a lot more of that dust and make sure that we capture that dust in either the Cyclone or the vac and make sure that that dust doesn't come back into the air that you're breathing. Go ahead with the unboxing. The box is pretty straightforward. There's 4 staples. I'll tip mine sideways. I'll pull these out just with the pliers quick. I always have a habit of pulling out these staples and then stepping on them, so I'm going to just set these aside behind me. Alright, so we have the staples removed. I'm going to open up this box and let's just take a look at what we have inside. The first piece that we'll pull out, that unboxing definitely was simple, so you'll notice that in one piece, one part, you pull it out, the box is empty. Let's get rid of that. You end up with just a pail of parts. Pretty simple. A couple 5-gallon buckets. We have the top. So we have the top with the 6 mounting hole. So we have the top here, 5-gallon pail cover, 6 bolt holes, pre-cut hole for the Cyclone. Everything's drilled. That will save at least some time. Instruction manuals, we'll set those way down here. We probably don't need those. Here's that short hose. It's roughly about 2 feet long. You have the 90 degree adapter. Hopefully they have some sort of worm clamp here that we can clamp that on, but we'll find out here in a moment. We have the rubber flange, which will basically, it's not really rubber though, it's more of a foam. That'll basically complete the seal there. Here's some aluminum foil tape. Inside the bucket we have another 90 degree elbow here. We'll set that aside. The buckets come put together as one. There's always a vacuum in there for some reason, so it takes a while to pull those apart. Bucket number 2 has a foam brick, probably to make sure that the parts on the inside don't get crushed. I'll save this for maybe another project. There's some casters, a bag of casters here, the bag of hardware, and I actually like this because they put the quantity, bolt size, and then what it is actually on the bag here. So if you end up losing a bolt or it's missing a bolt, You can either run to the parts bin, which I have on stock, or run out to the hardware store and grab what you need. Alright, here's that other worm clamp that I was talking about earlier. I guess it comes with one, so that's a bonus. Okay, we have two O-rings here. I wonder if those go something like this. Probably, so we'll actually complete that step here before we start. And a little wrench here. I won't be using this, but it's nice that if you didn't have this size wrench, they give you that part. So the first thing I'm looking at is these casters. I'm actually going to build a complete rack, a complete mountable vertical rack to put the shop vac on the bottom, similar to this, and then mount the Cyclone piece on the top. So I won't use these casters. I'm going to put these aside. I normally don't have time to DIY everything, so sometimes these kits, when they do go on sale, if it's in this case the Dust Deputy, for me sometimes it's just quicker to buy all the hardware ready to go and then just pre-assemble it. So starting off, we have the 5-gallon pail included. If you're building this with just the Cyclone itself, just grab any 5-gallon pail. The next couple steps looking at the manual is installing that foam block, which we got rid of, and all of the casters and hardware associated with that as well. So for me, and anyone following along online, you end up with this picture. You don't have the casters, you don't have the foam block, you don't need any of that hardware, so we've really simplified our steps. So let's go ahead and open up our bag of hardware. I'll move this aside right here, cut that bag open. Now I do like that the Dust Deputy labeled everything on the bag in case one of the bolts is missing. They usually end up, companies normally to save time end up just weighing all of this hardware, and if it's close you're good. That's how come you end up with 6 washers when you only need 4, and you always end up with some sort of spare parts. I will actually keep this in case I lose a bolt or if I end up needing to pull one from my own bolt storage on the back wall. Okay, so the first step that it looks like we want to do is get 6 of these nuts put together. 2, 4, 5, 6. We want the lid. So I'm going to set this other bucket aside. Alright, so we have our 6 bolts here. We have the lid. I tend to look like a robot at times because I actually lay out the parts in this fashion so I can assemble it a lot faster. These are the hex bolts. And so what are we getting rid of? We don't need the long bolts. We don't need 2 of the nuts. We don't need the foam block. We don't need the 4 washers. I've cleaned up our assembly table here. We basically have 2 or 3 steps. We're going to start with the most important product, or the most important piece on this build is the Cyclone. We'll take the bolts. We have 6 bolts. We'll put some washers in. Do my best to show you this step. We don't really need the instructions anymore. I'll set those aside. Now if you're like me, you normally put the instructions aside maybe a little too early and then have to unassemble and reassemble, but the good part about that is after many mistakes you end up trying to figure out what the instructions are missing, and then next time you don't need to look at those. So here's our initial pre-assembly with the Cyclone. We have the Cyclone, the short, roughly 1-inch bolts. We have the washers all the way around. Now all we need to do is take our lid, put the flange or the gasket, whichever one it is, put everything together carefully, and you may need to readjust some of those bolts. Okay, so this probably wasn't the best way to assemble this, but we'll start with the first one and we'll screw on the nut. And we'll go around one by one, tightening by hand. Alright, so we'll go around putting each of the bolts, or each of the nuts, onto each corresponding bolt all the way around. We'll do this very quickly. And when you get done, I'll pre-tighten all these by hand. When you get done, you end up with this. Everything's attached. The gasket's starting to get somewhat compressed. Underneath, everything lines up. The last step in this build is to take the 2 to 3 foot hose, attach the two 90-degree elbows with one of these worm clamps. Now, I have already went to the hardware store and purchased a second worm clamp to put one on each end. The rest of this build is relatively simple. Take the small beveled in edge of the 90-degree elbow, grab a worm clamp, slip this over the corrugated pipe, put the small end of the 90-degree elbow, rotate that as far in as it goes into the pipe. Take one of your worm clamps, and remember, it only comes with one. The size that you'd want to buy if you want to get a couple more of these are the, it's probably 1 7/8 up to about 2 3/4. The pipe fitting itself is roughly 2.5 inches, so anything a little bit larger than that. So we'll go ahead and tighten this worm clamp here. And you don't need to get it too tight. But the easiest way to test is when you're done, if you can hold on to both sides and twist, and it doesn't move, you got it. So the final step in this assembly is to grab the second 90-degree elbow, look for the larger end, place that on top of the Cyclone, and give it a quick twist. Grab the open end of your pipe. If you have a worm drive clamp, go ahead and put that on now. If not, duct tape or any other adhesive would work just fine. Let's place the other end of the pipe over the open end of the 90-degree elbow. Since I have a clamp here, I'm going to tighten that up. If you're using tape, just put a couple lengths of tape and wrap that around. Make sure that it's snug, and you're good to go. When you get done, it should look something like this. The Cyclone system on the right, Cyclone securely attached with hardware to the bucket lid and the bucket. The 90-degree elbow with the pipe, bringing the exhaust from the Cyclone into your shop vac, and then that gives you the intake port on the Cyclone right here. The final step before we can test out this cool device is to grab an extra shop vac pipe, place it over the intake port on the Cyclone, give it a quick twist, maybe add a quick piece of tape if you're interested, and we can try this out. Now let's take the entire setup, place it back on the floor, and I'll show you what this thing looks like in action. Now let's talk pricing. If you bought the whole kit with the buckets, the hardware, the lid, and the Dust Deputy Cyclone itself, that's going to run you roughly $100 US, not on sale. Sometimes some of the big box stores do have a price reduction on that. I was able to get this for, I think, $80, so 20% off for the whole kit. And I found that the kits normally only go on sale roughly once a year. If you're more DIY, if you have a little bit more time and you just want to buy the Cyclone here, the Cyclone I think runs around $50 or $60 on sale and roughly $70 US if you just buy the Cyclone itself. And that does not include any buckets, lids, hardware, gasket. All that has for the $70 is just the Cyclone itself. All right, well that wraps up this week's video for the unboxing and assembly of the Dust Deputy Deluxe. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. That'll alert you for our new videos coming out every other Wednesday. And if you want to see our next video, click here.